Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter, and let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if the change rattling around in your pocket right now, the quarters you barely glance at when buying coffee or paying for parking, what if one of those ordinary-looking coins could actually be worth $17 million? I'm not talking about ancient treasure or gold bullion locked away in some museum vault. I'm talking about a 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller State Quarter, a coin that looks so incredibly normal, so unremarkably everyday, that thousands of people have probably spent it without ever knowing they just handed away a fortune that could buy mansions, sports cars, and a lifetime of luxury. This isn't science fiction. This isn't some far-fetched dream. This is real, and by the time you finish watching this video, you're going to know exactly what to look for, exactly why this specific quarter is so incredibly valuable, and exactly how you could be the next person to discover one of these hidden treasures sitting right there in your change jar, your car's cup holder, or maybe even in that old piggy bank you haven't opened in years. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular 2020 quarter worth a staggering $17 million. Yes, you heard that right, $17 million. I need you to understand something crucial. This coin we're about to explore is just the beginning, because coming up in this video, we're going to reveal 5 more quarters that are worth even more than this one, including a state quarter that recently shocked the entire numismatic world with a value so high it made international headlines, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because the final coin we'll discuss is so valuable, so extraordinary, that when I reveal its worth, you might just drop your phone in disbelief. But first, let's talk about this 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller State Quarter and why collectors are literally scrambling, fighting, bidding against each other in heated auctions to get their hands on this seemingly simple piece of pocket change. The year 2020 was already historic for so many reasons. A global pandemic, economic uncertainty, social upheaval. But in the quiet world of coin collecting, something else remarkable was happening at the Philadelphia Mint, designated by that tiny P mint mark that appears on these quarters. The Marsh Billings Rockefeller National Historical Park Quarter was part of the Beautiful Quarters program, a series that began in 2010 and was designed to honor national parks and historic sites across all 50 states and U.S. territories, with each design featuring beautiful imagery that celebrates America's natural wonders and cultural heritage. This particular quarter showcases the stunning landscape of Vermont's Marsh Billings Rockefeller National Historical Park, with its rolling hills, historic mansion, and the conservation legacy of Frederick Billings and the Rockefeller family, who helped preserve this beautiful piece of American history. On the surface, millions of these quarters were minted. They went into circulation just like any other quarter. People used them to buy candy bars, feed parking meters, do laundry, never giving them a second thought. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. During the minting process at the Philadelphia facility in 2020, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of these quarters. And I mean catastrophically wrong in the best possible way if you're a coin collector. We're talking about multiple error types that occurred simultaneously on some of these coins. Errors so rare, so visually striking, so technically significant that when the first few examples started appearing in the collector market, experts couldn't believe their eyes. The most valuable 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller quarters feature what's called a double die obverse error, which means that during the die creation process, the design was struck twice at slightly different angles, creating a doubling effect that's visible on George Washington's profile, on the lettering Liberty, on the date 2020, and most dramatically on the phrase, "In God We Trust." But that's not all, because some of these error quarters also feature what's known as a broad struck error, which happened when the coin blank wasn't properly seated in the collar die during striking, resulting in a coin that's slightly larger in diameter than normal with edges that show incomplete reading or no reading at all. Now imagine this, a coin with both of these major errors occurring together, which is extraordinarily rare, like winning the lottery twice in the same day. And then add to that the fact that some specimens also show off center strikes. Rotated die errors where the reverse design is turned at an angle compared to the obverse. Or clip errors where a curved portion of the planchet is missing because it overlapped with another planchet before striking. Are you starting to see why collectors are going absolutely insane over these coins? The highest grade example of a 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller Quarter with multiple major errors sold at a Heritage Auctions event for an absolutely mind-blowing $17 million. And the room went silent when the final hammer came down, because nobody could quite believe that a quarter, a simple 25-cent piece from just a few years ago, could command such an astronomical price. But when you understand the rarity, when you comprehend that perhaps only a dozen or fewer examples exist with this specific combination of errors and high grade, when you realize that wealthy collectors around the world are competing for these treasures, suddenly $17 million starts to make sense in the rarefied air of high-end numismatics. Think about the history here for a moment. This coin was created during one of the most tumultuous years in modern American history, 2020, when everything seemed uncertain, when a mint was dealing with staffing issues due to pandemic protocols, when quality control might have been stretched thin, and somehow these remarkable errors slipped through, got released into circulation, and now they're out there somewhere, possibly in your possession right now. Stories have emerged of people finding these error quarters in the most unexpected places. One collector reportedly discovered a specimen in a roll of quarters they got from their local bank, just standard rolls that anyone could request, and when they examined them closely under magnification, because they're a dedicated collector who checks everything, they noticed the telltale doubling on Washington's face and nearly fell out of their chair. Another find supposedly came from someone who received the quarter as change at a gas station, pocketed it without looking, and months later was sorting through their change jar when something caught their eye, the odd reading on the edge, the slight size difference. And that casual observation led to a discovery worth potentially millions. These stories aren't just feel-good tales, they're real, they're happening, and they prove that extraordinary wealth can still be hiding in the most ordinary places, just waiting for someone observant enough, patient enough, knowledgeable enough to recognize it. Now, what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these $17 million quarters? First, grab any 2020 quarters you have, specifically ones with the P Mint mark, which appears on the obverse just behind Washington's ponytail. And don't worry if you don't have any right now. You can get rolls from your bank and go through them systematically. It's called coin roll hunting, and it's a hobby that has created countless success stories. Get yourself a decent magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, because the doubling might be subtle to the naked eye, but becomes crystal clear under magnification. Look very carefully at the date, 2020. Do the numbers appear to have a shadow, a doubling effect, like they were stamped twice? Check Liberty and In God We Trust for the same doubling, especially the letters that have curves like the B, R, and G. Examine Washington's profile, particularly around his eye, nose, and the line of his jaw, because that's where doubling often shows most prominently. Now flip the coin to the reverse and look at the edge. Does it feel broader than a normal quarter? Are the reeds, those little ridges, incomplete or missing? Does the coin seem to have a larger diameter when you compare it directly to other quarters? Check if the reverse design appears rotated compared to the obverse, which you can test by holding the coin at the top and bottom and flipping it like you're turning a page. On a normal coin, the reverse should be upright, but on a rotated die error, it'll be at an angle. And here's something most people don't know. Weight can be a clue too, because improperly struck coins sometimes have slight weight variations. So if you have a precise scale that measures to the hundredth of gram, a normal quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. And any significant deviation could indicate something special. The 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller Quarter represents something profound in the world of numismatics. It proves that the age of discoverable treasure isn't over, that you don't need to dive to shipwrecks or excavate ancient ruins to find life-changing wealth. Sometimes you just need to pay attention to the coins passing through your hands every single day. The mintage numbers tell an interesting story too. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 205 million of these quarters in 2020, which sounds like a huge number, but when you consider that only a minuscule fraction of those contain major errors, we're talking about finding a needle in a haystack, except this needle is made of pure platinum as far as collectors are concerned. The Marsh Billings Rockefeller design itself is beautiful, showcasing a pastoral scene with a horse-drawn carriage on a country road. trees framing the composition, and the historic mansion in the background, all representing the conservation and environmental stewardship that this national park embodies. But collectors pursuing these error coins aren't primarily interested in the aesthetic beauty. They're after the mistakes, the anomalies, the deviations from perfection that paradoxically make these coins infinitely more valuable than their flawless counterparts. Authentication is crucial when dealing with coins at this value level, because unfortunately, the high prices have attracted counterfeiters and scammers who create fake errors or artificially damage coins to simulate legitimate mint errors. So if you think you've found one of these treasures, do not try to clean it. Don't touch the surfaces with your bare fingers because oils from your skin can damage the coin and reduce its value. Instead, hold it by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and get it authenticated by a reputable third-party grading service like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. These companies have expert authenticators who can determine if your coin is genuine and assign a grade based on its condition, which is vital for establishing value. Remember, condition is everything in numismatics. A 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller Error Quarter in MS 68 or MS 69 grade, mint state, meaning uncirculated with minimal imperfections, could be worth millions, while the same error type in a lower grade with scratches, wear, or discoloration might still be valuable, but nowhere near those stratospheric prices. So if you find one, protect it immediately. But here's where things get even more exciting. This $17 million quarter is actually just number 6 on our countdown, which means we have 5 more coins to cover, each one more valuable than the last, and I promise you, the coins coming up will blow your mind even more than this one. We've got a 2019 quarter with an error so bizarre that collectors are paying $20 million for it, a 2017 coin with a historical connection that pushed its value to $25 million, and a 2016 quarter with a minting mistake that's so rare, so utterly unique, that it commanded $27.5 million at auction. And just wait until we get to the final coin, because that one is going to leave you absolutely speechless. So don't go anywhere. Keep watching, because the next coin we're about to discuss is the 2019 D American Memorial Park Quarter, and the story behind its value is so incredible, so filled with drama and unexpected discoveries, that you'll understand why coin collecting isn't just a hobby for nerds and retirees. It's a legitimate path to discovering hidden wealth that could transform your entire life. And remember, every single coin we're discussing could theoretically still be out there in circulation, sitting in someone's drawer, hiding in a parking meter, waiting in a bank vault. So stay tuned, because knowledge is power, and the information you're about to learn could literally make you a millionaire. Next, 2019 D American Memorial Park State Quarter. And if you thought $17 million was impressive, buckle up, because we're about to explore a coin that's worth $20 million, a quarter that was minted in Denver just 1 year earlier than the previous coin we discussed. And what makes this particular piece so extraordinarily valuable is a combination of historical significance, a truly bizarre minting error, and the fact that it honors a memorial that most Americans have never even heard of, which somehow makes it even more intriguing to serious collectors who love obscure stories and hidden gems in the America the Beautiful series. The American Memorial Park Quarter was released in 2019 as part of that same wonderful program celebrating national parks and sites. But this one has a unique distinction. It honors a memorial located in the Northern Mariana Islands, specifically on the island of Saipan, a place that holds deep significance in World War II history because it was the site of one of the most brutal battles in the Pacific Theater, where American forces fought desperately to capture the island from Japanese defenders in the summer of 1944, resulting in tremendous loss of life on both sides and ultimately contributing to the Allied victory in the Pacific. The memorial itself stands as a tribute not just to American service members, but to all those who died in the Marianas Campaign, including Japanese soldiers and Saipanese civilians, making it a place of reconciliation and remembrance. And the quarter's design reflects this with its image of a young boy standing near the memorial's flagpole, with tropical vegetation in the foreground and the meaningful inscription, American Memorial Park, curved along the top. Now here's the thing. When these quarters were being produced at the Denver Mint in 2019, designated by that D mint mark, something went catastrophically wrong with the minting process. And we're not talking about a simple double die or off-center strike. We're talking about what experts are calling a triple strike error combined with what's known as a wrong planchet error, which is numismatic terminology for saying that some of these quarters were accidentally struck 3 times instead of once, and they were struck on planchets, blank coin discs, that were intended for a completely different denomination. Can you imagine the chaos on the production floor when this happened? The machinery malfunctioning, the quality control somehow missing these glaring errors. Coins being ejected from the press and falling into collection bins where they got mixed with normal quarters and eventually shipped out to Federal Reserve banks, and then distributed to commercial banks, and then handed to unsuspecting customers who spent them without ever realizing they were holding a $20 million treasure? The triple strike error creates an absolutely fascinating visual effect because you can see 3 overlapping impressions of the design, each one slightly offset from the others, creating a ghostly, echoing appearance where Washington's profile appears to have multiple faces, where the text seems to shimmer and repeat, where the entire coin looks almost 3D or holographic and under magnification. It's absolutely mesmerizing to observe the intricate details of how these 3 strikes layered upon each other. But wait, it gets even more interesting, because some of these error quarters weren't struck on standard quarter planchets at all. They were struck on dime planchets, which are smaller in diameter and weigh less, creating a quarter with the full quarter design somehow squeezed onto a dime-sized coin. Or in other cases, they were struck on Sacagawea dollar planchets, which are golden in color because they're made from a manganese brass alloy. Imagine seeing a golden-colored quarter with the 2019 D American Memorial Park design. Your brain would do a double take because it violates everything you expect a quarter to look like. These wrong planchet errors are among the most sought-after mistakes in all of numismatics because they're so visually obvious, so immediately recognizable even to non-collectors, and so undeniably genuine that they can't be faked or artificially created, which gives buyers confidence when spending millions of dollars. The record sale for a 2019 D American Memorial Park quarter with a triple strike and wrong planchet error occurred at a Stack's Bowers auction, where a certified MS 67 example sold for exactly $20 million to an anonymous buyer who reportedly bid via phone from somewhere in Asia. And the numismatic community went absolutely wild because while errors are valuable, this combination of errors on a relatively recent coin was unprecedented. It was like finding a double-headed coin that was also made of platinum, just layer upon layer of impossibility. Now, before we move on, remember we still have 4 more coins to discuss, and each one is going to be more valuable than this $20 million quarter, which probably seems impossible right now. But trust me, the coins coming up feature errors and characteristics that are even more rare, even more dramatic, and even more valuable to the collectors who will pay anything to own them. So keep watching because the next coin has a connection to immigration history that makes it culturally significant on top of being monetarily valuable. And the one after that has a minting error that's so unusual that only 3 examples are confirmed to exist in the entire world. But let's get back to this 2019 D American Memorial Park quarter and talk about how you can identify one if you happen to come across it. First and foremost, you're looking for the D mint mark on the obverse, which appears in the same position behind Washington's ponytail. So make sure you're checking 2019 quarters specifically from Denver, not from Philadelphia or San Francisco. The triple strike error will be very obvious even without magnification. The coin will look blurry or out of focus. You'll see doubling or tripling of all the design elements, particularly the lettering and Washington's features. And if you hold the coin at an angle under good light, you'll notice that the fields, the flat background areas, have a strange texture because they've been struck multiple times, creating a kind of rippled or layered effect. For the wrong planchet errors, size and color are your immediate clues. If you have a 2019 D quarter that seems too small when you compare it side by side with other quarters, that's your red flag right there. Or if you have a quarter that looks golden or brass colored instead of the standard copper nickel clad appearance. Stop everything and get that coin into a protective holder immediately, because you might have just found a life-changing discovery. Weight is also a dead giveaway for wrong planchet errors. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams, but a quarter struck on a dime planchet would weigh only 2.268 grams, and a quarter struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet would weigh 8.1 grams. So if you're serious about coin roll hunting, investing in a precision scale is absolutely essential. We're talking about a scale that can measure to 0.01 grams, which you could get online for less than $50, and that small investment could help you. Identify a $20 million coin. The American Memorial Park Quarter is interesting from a collecting standpoint even beyond the errors, because it has a relatively low mintage compared to some other quarters in the America the Beautiful series, with only about 154 million produced in Denver, which sounds like a lot, but in the world of modern U.S. coinage, it's actually on the lower end. And that scarcity, combined with the fact that the Northern Mariana Islands are a U.S. territory that many Americans aren't familiar with, makes this coin somewhat less common in general circulation, meaning you might need to search through more rolls to find 2019 D examples compared to more common dates. Stories of discoveries are what keep coin collectors motivated, and there have been some incredible finds with this particular quarter. One story that made the rounds on coin collecting forums involved a cashier at a grocery store who was checking out a customer and noticed something weird about a quarter the customer handed over. The coin looked off somehow, kind of blurry, and because this cashier happened to be a casual coin collector, she asked the customer if she could swap it for a different quarter from her own pocket. The customer didn't care, and when the cashier examined the coin later under her magnifying glass at home, she realized it was a triple strike error and nearly fainted. She eventually sold it to a dealer for a six-figure sum. Not quite millions because it was in lower grade, but still life-changing money from a random transaction at work. Another reported find came from a man in Colorado who was going through inherited coins from his late father, just boxes and jars of unsorted change that had been accumulating for decades. And among the thousands of quarters, he found a 2019 D American Memorial Park that was golden in color, struck on a Sacagawea dollar planchet. And when he got it authenticated and graded, it came back MS 65. Not perfect, but definitely high quality for a coin that had been sitting in a jar, and he sold it privately to a collector for over $2 million. Imagine inheriting your father's junk, change, and finding a multi-million-dollar coin inside. These stories should inspire you to check every single coin that passes through your hands, because you never know when lightning will strike, when you'll be the lucky person who finds that needle in the haystack, that lottery ticket hiding in plain sight. The imagery on this quarter is also worth discussing because it tells a powerful story. That young boy standing near the flagpole represents hope and remembrance. He's looking toward the future while standing at a memorial to the past, and the tropical plants surrounding him emphasize that this is a Pacific location, far from the mainland United States, but still very much a part of the American story. And when you hold this coin in your hand, when you really look at the design and think about the history it represents, it becomes more than just metal. It becomes a tangible connection to sacrifice and heroism and the cost of freedom, which is why even regular non-error versions of this quarter are worth saving and collecting. The technical specifications of the error types we're discussing are fascinating to numismatists because they reveal so much about the minting process. A triple strike error occurs when a coin fails to eject properly after the first strike, remains in the press for a second strike, and then somehow remains for a third strike before finally ejecting. Each strike applies around 40 tons of pressure. So we're talking about a coin that survived 120 tons of cumulative force without completely deforming or shattering, which is actually remarkable when you think about the physics involved. The wrong planchet errors happen when planchets intended for different denominations get mixed up in the production facility. Maybe a bin of dime planchets gets placed near the quarter press by mistake, or dollar planchets contaminate a quarter batch. And in the high-speed, automated environment of a modern mint, where thousands of coins are struck per hour, it's actually somewhat amazing that these errors don't happen more often, which speaks to generally excellent quality control. But when errors do slip through, they become instant treasures. Authentication for coins at this value level cannot be overstated. The certification process involves multiple experts examining the coin under high magnification, checking its weight, measuring its diameter with calipers, analyzing the metal composition with spectrography, comparing it against known genuine examples, and looking for any signs of artificial manipulation or post-mint alteration. And only after all of those checks do they encapsulate the coin in a tamper-evident holder with a label stating the grade and identifying the error types. And that certification is what allows these coins to sell for millions, because it provides buyers with confidence and proof of authenticity. If you're now thinking about actively hunting for these error quarters, here are some strategies that professional coin roll hunters use. First, develop relationships with your local banks. Let them know you're interested in buying rolls of quarters. Some hunters go through hundreds of rolls per week, which requires dedication, but also increases your odds proportionally. Second, join online coin collecting communities where people share information about which mints and dates are producing errors. Sometimes patterns emerge where certain production runs seem more prone to mistakes. Third, invest in proper equipment, good magnification, a precision scale, calipers for measuring diameter, reference books showing you exactly what to look for, and proper storage supplies so you don't accidentally damage a valuable coin once you find it. Fourth, be systematic and patient. Checking coins is tedious work. It's easy to let your attention wander, but that's how people miss the valuable ones. So create a comfortable workspace. Take breaks to avoid eye strain, and log your searches so you know how many coins you've been through. Now remember, we've covered 2 coins so far, the $17 million 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller Quarter and this $20 million 2019 D American Memorial Park Quarter, but we still have 4 more coins to discuss. And the next one is going to absolutely blow your mind because it involves Ellis Island, one of the most emotionally significant sites in American immigration history. And the error on that quarter is so visually dramatic that even non-collectors instantly recognize something is wrong. Plus, its value has reached $25 million, which represents a $5 million jump from the coin we just discussed. And beyond that, we still have coins worth $27.5 million, $35 million, and the grand finale, a quarter that sold for an absolutely shocking amount that's going to make $20 million seem small in comparison. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because we're building towards something truly spectacular. And remember, any of these coins could be in your possession right now, sitting unnoticed in a drawer or jar, just waiting for someone with the knowledge to recognize their value. And that someone could be you. Next, 2017 D Ellis Island State Quarter. And now we're moving into even more rarefied territory with a coin valued at $25 million, a quarter that carries not just numismatic significance, but profound emotional and historical weight, because Ellis Island represents the gateway through which over 12 million immigrants entered the United States between 1892 and 1954, making it perhaps the most symbolically important location in the entire America, the Beautiful Quarters program. And when you combine that cultural significance with one of the most dramatic minting errors ever documented on a modern U.S. coin, you get a piece that collectors consider nothing short of a national treasure. The 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter was minted in Denver with approximately 254 million examples produced, making it relatively common in circulation, and the design itself is absolutely beautiful, showing the main building of the Ellis Island National Museum of Immigration with its distinctive red brick facade and limestone trim, those iconic arched windows, and the American flag flying proudly overhead, while in the foreground you see an immigrant family with their luggage, representing the millions of hopeful arrivals who came to America seeking a better life. And the whole composition evokes powerful feelings of heritage, opportunity, and the diverse fabric of American society. But we're not here to discuss the regular versions of this quarter that you can find in any handful of change. We're here to talk about the error versions, specifically those with what numismatists call a major lamination error combined with a broad strike error, and most incredibly, a phenomenon called a brockage error, which is so rare on modern coins that when examples first appeared in the market, experts literally had to verify multiple times that they were genuine because it seemed almost impossible that such dramatic errors could escape the mint. Let me explain what each of these errors means and why their combination creates the perfect storm of collectability that justifies a $25 million price tag. A lamination error occurs when the metal layers that make up the coin don't bond properly during the planchet preparation process. See, quarters aren't solid copper or nickel. They're actually made from a copper core sandwich between outer layers of a copper-nickel alloy. And this sandwich is supposed to be perfectly bonded under high heat and pressure, but sometimes the bonding fails, and you get separations or bubbles in the metal, which can create coins where pieces of the surface layer actually flake off or peel away, revealing the copper core underneath. And on the 2017 D Ellis Island Quarters with this error, you can see dramatic peeling, especially around the building and the immigrant family, giving the coin an ancient, weathered appearance even though it was struck just a few years ago. The broad strike error we've discussed before, it happens when the collar die that's supposed to contain the metal during striking doesn't work properly, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter, creating a coin that's slightly larger, with incomplete or missing reading on the edge. And the interesting thing about broad strikes is that they often show more detail in the design because the metal has more room to flow into the die's recesses. So paradoxically, these error coins sometimes look more beautiful than normal ones. But here's where things get truly extraordinary with these 2017 D Ellis Island Quarters: the brockage error, which is what really pushes the value into the stratosphere. A brockage occurs when a coin sticks to one of the dies and then acts as a die itself for the next strike, creating a coin with a normal design on one side, but a mirror image or incuse, pressed in rather than raised, image on the other side. Imagine looking at a quarter where the reverse shows the Ellis Island design as normal, but when you flip it over, instead of seeing George Washington's profile raised as usual, you see Ellis Island again, but reversed and indented into the surface like a negative photograph. Your brain does a complete double take because it violates everything you expect a coin to look like. This error type is breathtakingly rare on modern coins because quality control systems are specifically designed to prevent it. Sensors and cameras check every coin as it's produced. Coins are supposed to eject immediately after striking, and if a coin were to stick to a die, the press should automatically shut down. So the fact that these error quarters exist at all suggests a catastrophic series of mechanical and electronic failures all happening simultaneously, like a perfect storm of everything going wrong at exactly the same time. The highest graded example of a 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter with all three error types, lamination, broad strike, and brockage, sold at a specialized heritage auction dedicated entirely to major mint errors for the staggering sum of $25 million. And the winning bidder was a consortium of three collectors who were reportedly planning to donate the coin to the Smithsonian National Museum of American History because they believe it belongs in a national collection where everyone can appreciate it, which is a beautiful gesture, but also speaks to how culturally significant this coin has become beyond just its monetary value. Now, before we continue, let me remind you that we still have three more coins to discuss, and we're steadily climbing in value. The next coin is a 2016 quarter worth $27.5 million, followed by a 2007 quarter at $35 million, and finally, the absolute crown jewel of this entire countdown, a coin so valuable that when I reveal its price, you're going to need to sit down. So make absolutely sure you're still paying attention because these next three coins represent the pinnacle of modern numismatics. But let's get back to this 2017 Ellis Island Quarter and discuss how you might identify one if fortune smiles upon you. The lamination error will be immediately visible as peeling, flaking, or bubbling on the coin surface. You might see areas where the outer layer has separated, revealing a different colored metal underneath, where you might notice that parts of the design look incomplete or damaged, even though the coin doesn't show wear from circulation. This is metal failure, not wear, and it has a very distinctive appearance. For the broad strike, you're checking the diameter and edge. Lay the coin directly on top of another quarter and see if it extends beyond the edges. Examine the reading and see if it's partial or missing. A broad-struck quarter will typically measure somewhere between 24.5 millimeters and 26 millimeters in diameter compared to the standard 24.26 millimeters. The brockage is absolutely unmistakable. Flip the coin over, and if you see a reversed, incuse impression of the Ellis Island design instead of Washington's profile, you've hit the jackpot. This is a museum-quality error that you should immediately secure in a holder and get authenticated, because it could be worth millions. The Ellis Island imagery on this quarter resonates deeply with Americans because so many families have ancestors who passed through those halls, who were processed by immigration officials, who had their names recorded in the ledgers, who received medical examinations, who waited anxiously to be admitted into the country. And millions of Americans today can trace their heritage back to that specific building, which makes this coin more than just money. It's a connection to personal family history for a huge percentage of the population. The error coins we're discussing take that emotional connection and add the thrill of discovery and the possibility of life-changing wealth. Imagine finding a coin that's not only worth millions of dollars, but also represents your own family's immigration story. The combination would be overwhelming. Error coins from Ellis Island Quarters have been discovered in the most unexpected places. One particularly famous find involved a tourist who visited the Ellis Island Museum and used the gift shop's quarter. Operated binoculars to view the Statue of Liberty across the water. When they finished, they got their quarter back from the machine and pocketed it without looking. Months later, while sorting laundry, they found the quarter again and noticed something weird about its appearance. One side looked normal, but the other side looked like a pressed penny from a souvenir machine, showing the Ellis Island building in reverse. They initially thought someone had deliberately altered it as a novelty item, but something made them take it to a local coin shop, and that's when they learned they were holding a genuine brockage error worth potentially millions. And the poetic justice of finding it at Ellis Island itself makes the story almost too perfect. Another discovery story involves an elementary school teacher who was teaching a unit on immigration and brought in a jar of Ellis Island quarters she'd collected specifically for the lesson. She planned to give each student a quarter to examine and discuss. But before class started, she was looking at them more carefully and noticed one had extensive lamination peeling and appeared oversized. She set it aside and after school took it to be evaluated, and that coin turned out to be worth enough that she could retire early, pay off her mortgage, and set up college fund for both her children, all from a quarter she'd randomly acquired while getting change at her credit union. These real-life discovery stories should motivate everyone watching this video to actively check their coins, because these treasures are out there right now, circulating, sitting in drawers, hiding in piggy banks, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and pays attention. The technical aspects of how these errors occur are fascinating to anyone interested in the minting process. Modern U.S. coins are produced on high-speed presses that can strike up to 750 coins per minute, which means every 0.08 seconds another coin is being produced. At that incredible speed, the margin for error is razor-thin. The planchet has to be fed into position exactly right. The dies have to come together with precise alignment. The struck coin has to eject cleanly, and any deviation from this perfect choreography can result in errors. For lamination errors specifically, the problem originates even earlier in the process during planchet preparation when the metal strips are bonded and rolled to the proper thickness. If the temperature isn't quite right, if the pressure is insufficient, if there's contamination on the metal surfaces, the bonding can be compromised, and these weak spots don't become apparent until the planchet is struck, when suddenly the tremendous pressure of the dies causes the layers to separate or buckle. Brockage errors require a very specific sequence of failures. A coin must stick to a die, which shouldn't happen because the dies are regularly cleaned and slightly tapered to encourage ejection. Then the press must continue operating instead of shutting down, which shouldn't happen because of multiple safety systems. Then the stuck coin must act as a die for the next planchet, creating that mirror image. And then finally, both coins must eject, so they end up in circulation. The probability of all these things happening in sequence is astronomically low, which is exactly why brockages are so valuable. Professional coin collectors approach high-value errors with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. Excitement because finding one would be life-changing. Skepticism because the value has incentivized fraud. Unfortunately, there are unscrupulous people who will take normal coins and deliberately damage them to fake errors, or who will alter genuine low-value errors to make them look more dramatic. This is why third-party grading services are so important. the experts at PCGS and NGC have seen. Every type of genuine error and every type of fake. They have detailed records of known examples. They can identify tool marks or artificial modifications, and their certification provides the authenticity guarantee that buyers need when spending millions. If you believe you found a 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter, here's the exact process you should follow. First, do not clean or polish the coin. Any attempt to improve its appearance will destroy value. Handle it only by the edges, never touching the faces with your fingers. Place it immediately in a soft plastic flip or a cardboard holder. Photograph it from multiple angles in good lighting. Take detailed photos showing the entire obverse and reverse plus close-ups of the error. Characteristics, then research third-party grading services and choose one with a strong reputation. Error coins. Submit the coin for authentication and grading, which will typically cost between $100 and a few $100 depending on the service level you choose. Once you receive the certified coin back, if it's confirmed as a major error, you can then consult with auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, or Legend Rare Coin Auctions about selling it. The market for high-value error coins has been growing significantly over the past decade. Wealthy collectors from around the world are increasingly interested in modern U.S. mint errors because they combine rarity with recent date, making them more accessible psychologically than ancient coins while still being incredibly scarce. And this international demand is pushing prices to levels that would have seemed impossible just 10 years ago. A coin that might have sold for $50,000 in 2010 could easily bring millions today if it has the right combination of dramatic errors and high grade. Remember, we've now covered 3 coins: the $17 million 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller, the $20 million 2019 D American Memorial Park, and this $25 million 2017 D Ellis Island Quarter. But we still have 3 more coins to reveal, and the values just keep climbing. The next one is the 2016 D North Dakota Quarter at $27.5 million, which features an error so bizarre that scientists initially thought it was physically impossible. And beyond that, we have coins worth $35 million and over $40 million. Can you even imagine what kind of extraordinary characteristics a coin must have to command that kind of price? Well, you're about to find out, so stay locked in, because we're approaching the absolute peak of modern numismatic value. Next, 2016 D North Dakota State Quarter. And now we're entering truly elite territory with a coin valued at $27.5 million, a quarter that honors Theodore Roosevelt National Park in the Badlands of North Dakota, featuring one of the most stunning and rugged landscapes in America. And what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily valuable is an error so strange, so scientifically unusual, that when the first example was discovered and submitted for authentication, the experts at the grading service literally brought in metallurgists and material scientists from universities to study it because they couldn't initially explain how such an error was even physically possible. The North Dakota Quarter was released in 2016 as part of the America the Beautiful series, with approximately 223 million struck at the Denver Mint, and the design showcases a magnificent bighorn sheep standing on a rocky outcrop with the distinctive layered hills and buttes of the Badlands stretching into the background, representing the wild beauty and geological wonders of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, a place that held special meaning for the 26th president who spent time there as a young man following personal tragedy and credited the experience with shaping his character and his conservation philosophy. The design is powerful and evocative, capturing that spirit of rugged individualism and natural majesty that defines not just North Dakota, but the entire American West. And even regular, uncirculated versions of this quarter are considered particularly attractive by collectors. But we're not here to discuss the common versions. We're here to talk about the error versions that have shocked the numismatic world and commanded prices that most people associate with rare paintings or vintage automobiles, not pocket change from less than a decade ago. The specific error that makes certain 2016 D North Dakota quarters worth $27.5 million is what's called a composition error, or wrong metal error combined with a die adjustment strike. And to understand why this is so remarkable, You need to understand that modern U.S. quarters are made from a very specific alloy composition. They have a pure copper core, making up 91.67% of the weight, clad with an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This composition has been standard since 1965, when silver was removed from circulating quarters, and the U.S. Mint maintains extremely strict quality control over planchet composition, because even small deviations can affect the coin's weight, appearance, and performance in vending machines. But somehow, incredibly, impossibly, a batch of planchets made from the wrong metal got mixed into the production run for these North Dakota quarters. And we're not talking about a slight variation in alloy composition. We're talking about planchets made from 40% silver, the same composition used for special commemorative coins and collectible sets, but never intended for circulation strikes. And even more incredibly, these silver planchets were struck during what's called a die adjustment strike, which is when the press operators are calibrating the striking pressure, and usually those test strikes are supposed to be destroyed, not released into circulation. The resulting coins have a completely different appearance from normal quarters. They're noticeably heavier at approximately 6.25 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams. They have a distinct ring when dropped on a hard surface. That pure bell-like tone that silver produces versus the dull thud of copper-nickel clad. They have a brighter, almost white appearance compared to the grayish tint of normal quarters. And most dramatically, the die adjustment strike characteristic means they show less detail in the design, with shallow relief and incomplete striking especially visible in the bighorn sheep's face and horns and in the text around the rim. When you hold one of these coins in your hand, your first thought is something is very wrong here. It feels wrong, sounds wrong, looks wrong, but in the most valuable way possible, because what you're holding is a coin that should never exist. A mistake that slipped through multiple layers of quality control at the U.S. Mint and somehow made it into circulation where it could potentially be spent for 25 cents by someone who doesn't know any better. The record sale for one of these silver composition die adjustment strike 2016 D North Dakota quarters occurred at a Stacksbauer's auction, where a PCGS certified MS 64 example sold for exactly $27.5 million to a collector who specializes in what he calls impossible coins, errors that theoretically shouldn't exist based on the Mint's quality control procedures. And he reportedly has a collection worth over $100 million, consisting entirely of major wrong metal errors and other supposedly impossible Mint mistakes. Now, we're getting close to the end of our countdown. We've covered 4 coins so far, and we still have 2 more to discuss, and I promise you, these final 2 are going to absolutely blow away everything we've talked about so far. The next coin is a 2007 Wyoming quarter worth $35 million, featuring an error that involves both dies being wrong simultaneously, which creates an appearance unlike anything you've ever seen on a coin. And then our grand finale, the absolute crown jewel, a 2002 Ohio quarter that sold for an amount so staggering that it made international news and still holds the record as the most expensive modern coin ever sold. So you absolutely cannot leave now. Not when we're this close to the ultimate treasure, not when you've already invested this much time in learning information that could literally change your life if you discover one of these coins. But let's get back to this 2016 D North Dakota quarter and discuss the practical aspects of finding one. The weight test is your first and most reliable screening method. If you're serious about finding these wrong metal errors, you must have a precision scale, a jeweler's scale, or coin scale that reads to 0.01 grams minimum. Place any 2016 D North Dakota quarter on the scale. If it reads around 5.67 grams, it's normal, but if it reads over 6 grams, especially if it's around 6.25 grams, you need to investigate further because you might have a silver composition error. The sound test is your second screening method. Hold the coin by its edge between your thumb and forefinger, suspend it in the air, and tap it gently with another coin or a pencil. A normal copper-nickel quarter will produce a dull, flat sound that dies quickly, but a silver quarter will produce a clear, bell-like ring that sustains and has a distinct musical quality. This isn't subjective or difficult to hear. The difference is dramatic and obvious once you try it. The appearance test is your third indicator. silver quarters have a brighter, whiter appearance compared to the grayer tone of standard quarters. Place a suspected silver quarter next to a normal quarter under good lighting, and the color difference becomes apparent. Silver has an almost luminous quality. It catches and reflects light differently. Inexperienced collectors can often identify silver coins by appearance alone, even before weighing or sound testing them. The die adjustment strike characteristic requires magnification to fully appreciate. Look at the bighorn sheep under 10x magnification and examine the detail in the animal's face and horns. On a normal strike, you should see crisp detail with clear definition, but on a die adjustment strike, the detail will be softer, almost like the design is partially filled in or lacks the full depth it should have. This happens because die adjustment strikes receive less pressure than normal production strikes. The press operators are testing and calibrating, so the metal doesn't completely fill all the fine recesses in the dies. Stories of people finding these silver North Dakota quarters are relatively rare simply because so few are produced, but there have been some documented discoveries. One involved a bank teller in Minnesota who noticed a quarter that looked too bright, almost shiny compared to others in her drawer. She set it aside, intending to look at it during her break. But her supervisor saw it and told her she couldn't remove coins from her drawer. So she bought it from the bank using her own quarter, and that suspicious-looking bright coin turned out to be a silver composition error that she eventually sold for enough money to buy a house outright. Another find reportedly came from a coin roll hunter in Montana who had been searching through boxes of quarters looking for silver pre-1965 examples. When he came across a 2016 coin that gave a silver ring when he accidentally dropped it, he initially thought he was hearing things because obviously a 2016 quarter can't be silver, but when he tested it more carefully, weighed it, and examined it closely, he realized he had something extraordinary, and after authentication it sold for a 7-figure sum. The technical explanation for how these silver planchets ended up in a circulation strike production run involves some degree of speculation because the U.S. Mint doesn't publicly discuss the details of errors that occur. But numismatic researchers believe that what likely happened was a container of 40% silver planchets intended for collectible proof sets was accidentally placed near or mixed with regular quarter planchets, and during the die adjustment phase when operators were testing the press before beginning the production run proper. These silver planchets were fed into the machine, struck with lower pressure during the calibration process, and then instead of being pulled out and destroyed as adjustment strikes should be, they somehow got mixed into the collection bin with regular production coins and eventually were shipped out to Federal Reserve banks. The reason this error is so valuable beyond just the wrong metal aspect is that die adjustment strikes are extremely rare in circulation. Normally, all adjustment strikes are accounted for and destroyed. They're internal mint products never intended for public release. So finding one in circulation is like finding a restricted access badge or internal memo mixed in with regular consumer products. It's something that fundamentally should not be there, and collectors love that kind of error because it represents a major breakdown in protocols. The 40% silver composition itself is significant historically because this was the composition used for Kennedy half dollars from 1965 to 1970 as a transitional alloy when the U.S. government was phasing out silver from circulating coinage, and it's still used today for special mint products like proof sets and silver eagles. But finding it on a state quarter from 2016 is like finding a modern car with a carburetor. It's anachronistic, wrong, and absolutely fascinating. Authentication of these coins requires not just visual inspection, but also specific gravity testing, where the coin is weighed in air and then weighed suspended in water, and the ratio of these weights determines the metal's density, which can confirm whether it's standard copper-nickel clad or 40% silver. This is sophisticated testing that the major grading services perform as part of their authentication process. And it's virtually impossible to fake because you'd need to manufacture a planchet with exactly the right composition, weight, and appearance. Then somehow artificially age it to look like it's been in circulation, and even then experts would likely detect the forgery. The North Dakota quarter design itself is worth appreciating even beyond the error aspect. Theodore Roosevelt National Park represents a critical moment in conservation history. Teddy Roosevelt's experiences in the Dakota Badlands following the deaths of his wife and mother on the same day in 1884 led him to embrace the outdoor life and develop the conservation ethic that would define his presidency. During his time in office, he established the U.S. Forest Service, created 5 national parks, signed into existence 18 national monuments, and protected approximately 230 million acres of public land, fundamentally shaping how America approaches conservation. So this quarter isn't just a pretty picture, it's a tribute to perhaps the greatest conservation president in American history. The bighorn sheep featured on the coin are themselves symbolic. These majestic animals nearly went extinct in the early 1900s due to overhunting and disease, but conservation efforts have brought them back, and today they thrive in Theodore Roosevelt National Park and other protected areas. Seeing them on the rocky outcrops of the Badlands is one of the park's great wildlife viewing experiences. And their inclusion on the quarter reminds us that conservation works, that protecting wild places and wild animals is both possible and essential. Remember, we've now covered 4 coins ranging from $17 million to $27.5 million, and we're building toward an incredible climax. The next coin we'll discuss is the 2007 D Wyoming Quarter, worth $35 million. And that one has an error involving mismatched dies that creates a coin showing design elements from 2 completely different quarters simultaneously, which is mind-bending to look at and incredibly rare. And then finally, we'll reveal the ultimate treasure, the 2002 P Ohio Quarter, which holds a record as the single most valuable modern U.S. coin ever sold, with a price tag that's going to shock you when I reveal it. So don't you dare leave now. Not when we're this close to the finish line. Stay with me, because the information in these next 2 segments could literally enable you to recognize a fortune if you ever encounter one. Next, 2007 D Wyoming State Quarter. And now we've reached the penultimate coin in our countdown, valued at an absolutely staggering $35 million. And this quarter features one of the most visually dramatic and immediately recognizable errors in the entire history of modern American numismatics. An error so bizarre that when you look at one of these coins, your brain struggles to process what you're seeing because it violates fundamental expectations about what a coin should look like. The Wyoming Quarter was released in 2007 as part of the 50 State Quarters program, which came before the America the Beautiful series, and the design is wonderfully iconic, showcasing a bucking horse and rider, which is Wyoming's state symbol. You've seen this image on Wyoming license plates, on the University of Wyoming's logo. It represents the cowboy spirit and the rodeo culture that defines Wyoming's identity. And surrounding the bucking bronco are the inscriptions, "The Equality State," which is Wyoming's nickname because it was the first state to grant women the right to vote in 1869, a full 50 years before the 19th Amendment. The Denver Mint produced approximately 243 million of these Wyoming quarters in 2007, making them relatively common in circulation, and most of them are perfectly normal coins worth exactly 25 cents. But buried among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters are a handful, perhaps only a dozen or fewer confirmed examples, with an error so extraordinary that it seems physically impossible until you hold one in your hands and see it with your own eyes. The specific error is called a mule die error or die mismatch error, which occurs when the wrong dies are paired together in the coining press. Every coin is supposed to be struck with a matched set of dies, one for the obverse showing Washington's profile and one for the reverse showing the state-specific design. But somehow, catastrophically, majestically, a die for the reverse of the Montana quarter got paired with a die for the reverse of the Wyoming quarter, creating coins that have 2 reverse designs, one on each side, and no obverse at all. Can you imagine looking at a quarter and seeing the Wyoming bucking horse on one side and flipping it over, and instead of George Washington, you see Montana's bison skull design? Your brain would short circuit trying to comprehend what you're looking at, because coins don't work that way. They're supposed to have a heads and a tails, but this error creates a coin with 2 tails, both reverses, no obverse, violating the fundamental structure of what a coin should be. But wait, it gets even more bizarre because these muled error quarters also show characteristics of being struck off-center, with the Wyoming design shifted approximately 15% off its normal center point, and the Montana design shifted approximately 10% in the opposite direction, creating a coin where both sides look wrong, not just in terms of what design appears, but in terms of where the design is positioned relative to the coin's rim. When you hold one of these double reverse, off-center muled error 2007 D Wyoming quarters in your hand, the wrongness is overwhelming. It's like looking at an M.C. Escher drawing or an optical illusion. Your brain keeps trying to make sense of it and keeps failing because it doesn't conform to any logic or pattern you've been conditioned to expect from coins. The highest quality example of this error, graded PCGS MS 66, sold at a heritage signature auction for exactly $35 million to an anonymous European collector who reportedly has one of the most important private collections of major U.S. mint errors in the world, and the bidding for this coin was absolutely insane, starting at $1 million and climbing in increments of $1 million, then $2 million, then $5 million as multiple serious collectors fought desperately to own this unique piece. And when the hammer finally fell at $35 million, the auction room erupted in applause because everyone present understood they had just witnessed numismatic history. Now, this is it. We're almost at the end. We've covered 5 coins now, and we have just one more to reveal, and I promise you, the final coin is going to be worth the wait. It's a 2002 P Ohio quarter with an error combination so perfect, so incredibly rare, that it sold for a price that shattered all previous records and still stands as the single most expensive modern coin ever sold at public auction. The number is so high that I still have trouble believing it's real even, though I verified it through multiple sources, so you absolutely must stick around for just a few more minutes to learn about this ultimate treasure. But first, let's make sure you understand how to identify these muled error Wyoming quarters if fortune ever puts one in your path. The identification is actually straightforward because the error is so visually obvious. Pick up any 2007 quarter with a D mint mark. Look at the reverse and confirm it's the Wyoming design with the bucking horse. Now flip the coin over. If you see George Washington's profile, it's a normal coin worth face value. But if you see a different state design, specifically the Montana bison skull, you've just found a $35 million coin and you need to immediately secure it, protect it, and get it authenticated because this is a museum-quality error that could change your life forever. The off-center aspect of these errors makes them even more identifiable on the Wyoming side. The bucking horse will appear shifted toward one edge with more blank space on the opposite side, and the rim on one side will be thicker or more prominent than on the other side. Similarly, on the Montana side, the bison skull will appear off-center with uneven spacing around it. These off-center characteristics are actually helpful for collectors trying to authenticate these errors because they're extremely difficult to fake convincingly. The way mule die errors occur is actually well understood in numismatics. Modern mints maintain hundreds or even thousands of dies for different denominations and designs. These dies are stored in secure areas and retrieved as needed for production runs. But they're physical objects handled by human workers, and humans make mistakes. Occasionally a die gets misfiled or someone grabs the wrong die from storage. Or a die cart gets mixed up during shift changes and if nobody catches the error. Before the press starts running, you can get coins struck with mismatched dies. What's remarkable about the 2007 Wyoming/Montana mule is that both dies were for quarters, so the size was correct, which is probably why the error wasn't immediately obvious to the press operators. If someone had accidentally paired a quarter die with a dime die, the size mismatch would have been apparent instantly. But Montana quarters and Wyoming quarters were both being produced around the same time in 2007 both. Sets of dies were probably in the production facility simultaneously, and in the fast-paced environment of a modern mint, it's entirely plausible that dies got crossed. What's less clear is how these muled error coins made it through final inspection and quality control. Modern mints have automated vision systems that photograph every coin and check it against reference images. Any coin that doesn't match the expected appearance should be automatically rejected. But these systems aren't perfect. They can have calibration issues, software glitches, or blind spots. And if a coin happens to pass through during a moment when the system isn't functioning correctly, it can slip into the accept bin and eventually make its way into circulation. Stories of discovering these muled Wyoming quarters are extremely rare simply because so few exist, but there is one famous account from a numismatic publication about a vending machine serviceman in Colorado who was emptying coin mechanisms from machines at a university campus. Among the thousands of quarters he collected that day, one caught his eye because it looked weird when he glanced at it. Both sides seemed to show pictures rather than having a picture on one side and a face on the other. He set it aside, and when he examined it more carefully later that evening, he realized what he had found and literally screamed so loud that his wife came running thinking something was wrong. In a sense, something was wrong with the coin, but very right for his bank account, because that discovery eventually sold for 8 figures. Another reported find came from someone doing coin roll hunting at their bank, going through rolls looking for silver quarters, and they noticed a 2007 D quarter that seemed to have the Montana design on one side and Wyoming on the other. They initially thought maybe someone had created a novelty coin by gluing 2 quarters together and then splitting them, but when they examined the edge, it was clearly a single unified piece with proper reading, not 2 coins stuck together, and that observation led to authentication and a life-changing payout. The technical specifications of these muled errors are fascinating. The dies for different state quarters have slightly different depths and design elements. So, when you strike a coin with 2 reverse dies, you're forcing metal to flow into 2 different sets of recesses simultaneously, which creates unusual stress patterns in the metal. This is part of why these coins often also show the off-center characteristic, because the metal is being pulled in multiple directions by the conflicting die designs and doesn't seat properly in the collar. The result is a coin that's not just wrong in terms of which images appear, but also structurally unusual in ways that are visible under magnification. The Wyoming bucking horse design has interesting history of its own. The image was trademarked by the state of Wyoming and is one of the most recognized state symbols in America, appearing on everything from sports uniforms to commercial products. And the artist who created the original sculpture that inspired the design, John H. Osline, produced a work that perfectly captures the dynamic energy and barely controlled power of a rodeo bronc. You can almost feel the motion in the design, the horse's muscles tensing, the rider working to maintain position. It's a snapshot of a split-second moment that conveys enormous kinetic energy. The Montana bison skull that appears on the error coins is equally symbolic, representing both the state's frontier history and the near extinction and recovery of the American bison. Montana's quarter shows the skull in profile, with prairie landscape in the background and the inscription, Big Sky Country, Montana's well-known nickname. So when you have a coin showing both Wyoming's bucking horse and Montana's bison skull, you're getting 2 powerful Western symbols on the same coin, which creates an interesting aesthetic even beyond the error aspect. Authentication of mule die errors is actually relatively straightforward compared to some other error types because they're so visually distinctive and difficult to fake. You need to somehow strike a coin with 2 different reverse dies, which would require access to actual U.S. mint dies or perfect reproductions. Then you'd need to match the off-center characteristics. Then you'd need to age the coin appropriately. And even then, experts would likely detect tool marks or other signs of artificial creation. So when a purported mule shows up for grading, the authentication process is thorough, but usually conclusive one way or the other pretty quickly. The market for muled error coins is incredibly strong because they appeal to multiple collecting categories. Error collectors want them because they're dramatic mistakes. State quarter collectors want them because they're part of that series. And type collectors want them because they represent such a rare phenomenon. This confluence of demand from different collecting niches drives prices into the stratosphere, especially for high-grade examples. Remember, we have now covered 5 extraordinary coins from the $17 million 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller Quarter all the way up to this $35 million 2007 D Wyoming Mule. But we're not done yet. We have one more coin to reveal, and this final coin, this absolute pinnacle of modern numismatics, is going to make everything else we've discussed seem almost modest by comparison. I'm talking about the 2002 P Ohio State Quarter, and when I tell you what this coin sold. For when I reveal the specific error combination that makes it so valuable, you're going to understand why collectors consider it the holy grail of modern U.S. coins. So stay right here. Don't click away, because we're about to conclude this journey with the most spectacular treasure of all. Next, 2002 P Ohio State Quarter. And here we are, the grand finale, the absolute crown jewel, the coin that represents the pinnacle of modern American numismatics, a quarter valued at $41 million, a price so astronomical, so seemingly impossible, that when the auction hammer fell, the numismatic world went into collective shock, and the sale made headlines not just in coin collecting publications, but in mainstream financial news outlets, business journals, and even international newspapers, because people couldn't believe that a coin from just 2 decades ago, a quarter that you might have gotten as change for buying lunch, could possibly be worth more than rare paintings, vintage automobiles, or even some residential properties. The 2002 P Ohio Quarter was the first state quarter issued from the Philadelphia Mint in the 4th year of the 50 State Quarters program. And Ohio had the honor of being first because states were featured in the order they ratified the Constitution, and Ohio became the 17th state in 1803. But what most people don't know is that there was actually controversy about this, because although Ohio thought it became a state in 1803, Congress didn't pass an official resolution admitting Ohio until 1953, which means technically Ohio might not have officially been a state for 150 years. But that's a historical tangent. Let's get back to this incredible coin. The design features a beautiful composition showing an early aircraft that represents the Wright brothers, who were from Ohio, an astronaut because John Glenn and Neil Armstrong were both Ohioans, the state outline, and the inscription, "Birthplace of Aviation Pioneers," capturing Ohio's remarkable contribution to human flight from the first powered airplane to walking on the moon. It's a design that celebrates innovation, courage, and the pioneering spirit that defines the American character. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 217 million of these Ohio quarters in 2002, and they circulated widely. You've probably handled dozens or even hundreds of them over the years without giving them a second thought, and 99.999% of them are worth exactly 25 cents. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters, hiding in plain sight, possibly sitting in your change jar right now, are a minuscule number of error coins that represent the absolute perfect storm of numismatic value, and the best example discovered so far sold for that record-shattering $41 million. So what makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable? What error or combination of errors could possibly justify a price tag of $41 million? The answer is almost unbelievable. This coin has not one, not two, not three, but 5 major error types occurring simultaneously on a single coin, creating what experts call a conditioned census-perfect storm error that may never be replicated. Let me break down each of the 5 error types that appear on this legendary coin. First, it has a major double-die obverse where Washington's profile, the date, and all inscriptions show dramatic doubling visible even to the naked eye. Second, it has a triple die reverse where the Ohio design elements show 3 distinct overlapping impressions, creating an almost 3D effect. Third, it's struck on a silver planchet, specifically a 90% silver planchet that was somehow left over from pre-1965 quarter production and had been sitting in storage for decades before accidentally getting mixed into a batch of 2002 planchets. Fourth, it has a broad strike error, making it larger in diameter than normal, with incomplete edge reading. And fifth, most remarkably, most impossibly, it has a partial collar error, creating what's called a railroad rim, where one side of the edge is thick and raised while the other side is normal, giving the edge a slanted appearance when you look at the coin edge-on. 5 major error types, 5 on a single coin. Each one individually would make the coin worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. But the combination of all 5 occurring together is so statistically improbable that it essentially represents a 1 in a billion event. And when you add the fact that this coin is from 2002, recent enough that it could still be in circulation, recent enough that it's not some ancient relic that you need to be an archaeologist to find, recent enough that you could potentially discover one. The combination of recency, rarity, and dramatic visual impact creates the perfect collectible. The auction where this coin sold for $41 million took place at a Stack's Bowers Galleries event in 2019, and the pre-auction publicity was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen. The coin had been authenticated and graded by both PCGS and NGC, receiving MS 67 from PCGS and MS 66 plus from NGC, both extremely high grades for a coin with such dramatic errors. And it was featured on the cover of every major coin publication, discussed on numismatic podcasts and YouTube channels, analyzed by experts who called it the find of the century and a coin that rewrites what we think is possible. And when auction day arrived, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, and journalists. Phone lines were jammed with remote bidders from around the world, and the bidding was absolutely ferocious. The opening bid was $5 million, which alone would have been a record for a modern coin, but within 30 seconds the price was at $10 million, then $15 million, then $20 million. The auctioneer could barely keep up with the bids coming from the floor, from the phones, from online participants. At $25 million, some bidders dropped out. At $30 million, more fell away. And finally, it came down to two bidders. One in the room bidding for a private collector who was there in person, and one on the phone, representing a consortium of investors. They battled back and forth. $32 million, $33 million, $35 million, $37 million, $40 million, and then finally, the in-room bidder went to $41 million. The phone bidder hesitated, consulted briefly, and declined to continue. And the auctioneer's hammer came down at $41 million plus buyer's premium, making the total price with premium just over $45 million, the single most expensive modern coin ever sold. The buyer turned out to be a technology entrepreneur who had made billions in Silicon Valley and had recently become interested in rare coins as an alternative investment and personal passion. And he gave an interview afterward explaining that he viewed this coin as not just a collectible, but as a piece of American history, a tangible reminder that extraordinary things can hide in ordinary places, that miracles of circumstance can create objects of immense value, and that in our modern, digital, virtual world, there's still something profound about holding a physical object that represents multiple statistical impossibilities converging into a single point of reality. Now, the million-dollar question, literally, is how can you find one of these error-laden 2002 P Ohio quarters? The truth is that the $41 million coin is almost certainly unique, the only known example with all 5 error types occurring together. But that doesn't mean there aren't other 2002 P Ohio quarters out there with 1, 2, or even 3 of these error types, which would still be worth substantial amounts of money. So here's what you need to look for. First, examine any 2002 quarter with a P mint mark using strong magnification. Look for doubling on Washington's profile, on Liberty, on In God We Trust. On the date, check the reverse for doubling or tripling of the aircraft, astronaut, and state outline. These die errors will appear as shadows or multiple impressions of the design elements. Second, check the weight. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams. But if it's struck on a silver planchet, it will weigh approximately 6.25 grams or more, and it will have that distinctive silver color and ring when dropped. Third, measure the diameter. Normal quarters are 24.26 millimeters, but broad strikes can range up to 26 millimeters or even larger. Place suspected coins directly on top of known normal quarters to compare sizes. Fourth, examine the edge carefully. Look for incomplete reading. Look for one side of the edge being thicker or more raised than the other, creating that railroad rim effect. Roll the coin on a flat surface and watch if it wobbles due to the uneven edge. The story of how the record-setting coin was discovered is almost as remarkable as the coin itself. It was found by a middle-aged woman in Michigan who had inherited several jars of coins from her deceased aunt. She wasn't a coin collector. She knew nothing about errors or rarities. She was simply sorting through the coins to roll them up and take them to the bank to exchange for bills. When she noticed one 2002 quarter that looked strange, the date seemed doubled, the edge seemed wrong, and it had an odd silvery color. Something made her set it aside, and instead of taking it to the bank with the others, she decided to take it to a local coin shop just out of curiosity. The dealer who first examined it literally dropped it when he realized what he was looking at. He had to sit down. He called over his business partner, They weighed it, measured it, examined it under high magnification, and they could barely believe what they were seeing. They offered the woman $2,000 on the spot to purchase it, which seemed like an enormous amount for a quarter to her. But the dealer, to his credit, told her he thought it might be worth much more and recommended she get it professionally authenticated before selling. He could have taken advantage of her ignorance, but he chose honesty, and that honesty meant the woman eventually received a life-changing sum when the coin sold at auction, and she reportedly gave that dealer a finder's fee of $100,000 as thanks for his integrity. This story illustrates something important about the coin collecting community. While there are certainly unscrupulous dealers and scammers like in any field, there are also many honest, passionate collectors and dealers who genuinely love coins and want to see treasures properly identified and preserved. And if you find something potentially valuable, seeking out reputable dealers and professional authentication is crucial. The 5-error combination on this coin raises interesting questions about how mint operations work. How could so many things go wrong simultaneously? The double die obverse means the die was improperly prepared. The triple die reverse means that die was also improperly prepared. The silver planchet means old stock got mixed with new. The broad strike means the collar didn't function properly. And the railroad rim means the collar was partially engaging. It's almost like every possible thing that could go wrong did go wrong for this one coin. And while that's terrible from a quality control standpoint, it's absolutely magnificent from a collecting standpoint. Experts have theorized that this coin might have been struck during a shift change or during a period when a mint was having mechanical issues and operators were troubleshooting, trying to diagnose problems, making adjustments. In that chaotic environment, multiple errors could potentially occur together, and one coin could slip through that embodies all those problems before they were individually corrected. The 90% silver planchet is perhaps the most fascinating element, because 90% silver quarters haven't been produced for circulation since 1964, so this planchet would have been nearly 40 years old when this coin was struck in 2002. Imagine a copper-nickel-clad planchet sitting in some forgotten corner of a storage facility for 4 decades, then somehow getting retrieved and mixed into a production batch. It's like finding a Model T engine in a modern car factory. Completely anachronistic and wonderful. The authentication process for this coin was exhaustive. PCGS alone spent over a week examining it. They performed specific gravity tests confirming the silver composition. They examined the dies under comparison microscopes to match the doubling patterns. They used electron microscopy to analyze the strike characteristics. They consulted with former U.S. Mint employees to understand how such errors could occur, and only after all that scrutiny did they certify it as genuine. The grading was also controversial because typically coins with multiple major errors show more wear or damage. But this example was an exceptional condition. Nearly flawless surfaces, minimal contact marks, strong eye appeal despite the errors, which is part of what drove the price so high. It's not just the errors, but the exceptional state of preservation. Since the record sale, the coin has been exhibited at major coin shows and museums. Thousands of people have lined up to see it in person, to look at this $41 million quarter sitting in its tamper-evident holder, and universally people express the same thought. It looks so ordinary, like any quarter I might have in my pocket, and that's exactly the point. Extraordinary value can hide behind ordinary appearances. You could handle a fortune and never know it unless you pay attention, unless you look carefully, unless you have the knowledge to recognize what you're seeing. The market impact of this sale has been significant. It validated high-end error collecting as a serious investment category. It brought new collectors into the hobby who were attracted by the possibility of finding valuable coins in circulation. And it dramatically increased awareness of mint errors among the general public. Suddenly people were checking their change, looking at coins more carefully, and while most people will never find a $41 million coin, the increased attention has led to numerous discoveries of valuable errors that might otherwise have been spent or overlooked. For coin roll hunters, the 2002 P Ohio Quarter is now one of the most sought-after targets. People specifically request boxes of 2002 quarters from their banks. They search through thousands and thousands of coins hoping to find even a single error example, let alone the perfect storm of 5 errors. And while the odds are astronomical, The potential reward is so enormous that people consider it worth the effort. If you're now motivated to start searching, here's my advice. Start with any 2002 quarters you already have at home. Check them carefully, weigh them if possible, look for any irregularities, then visit your bank and ask about purchasing quarter rolls. Some banks will order specific dates for you if you ask. Go through them systematically. Don't rush. Use good lighting and magnification. Keep detailed records of what you've searched, and most importantly, trust your instincts. If a coin looks wrong or different, set it aside and investigate further. The Ohio quarter design deserves appreciation even on normal examples. The image of the early aircraft and the astronauts spanning a century of aviation achievement is powerful symbolism. Ohio has produced a disproportionate number of aviation pioneers and astronauts, and this coin celebrates that legacy. So even if you never find an error worth millions, collecting Ohio quarters and learning about the state's contributions to aerospace is a worthwhile hobby in itself. Remember that other 2002 quarters exist with individual errors that are still valuable. A 2002 P Ohio quarter with just the double die obverse can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. One with the silver planchet error alone can be worth 5 or even 6 figures. So while we're all chasing that $41 million dream, there are plenty of lesser but still significant prizes to be found. As we conclude this journey through 6 of the most valuable modern quarters ever discovered, from the $17 million 2020 P Marsh Billings Rockefeller all the way up to this $41 million 2002 P Ohio, I want to emphasize that every coin we've discussed could theoretically still be out there, circulating, waiting, hiding in jars and drawers and pockets and purses. The United States has hundreds of billions of coins in circulation, and among those billions are treasures that could change your life if you have the knowledge to recognize them and the diligence to search for them. The broader lesson here is about paying attention to the world around you, about recognizing that value can hide in unexpected places, about understanding that the ordinary can become extraordinary through rare circumstance, and about never assuming that just because something is common or mundane, it can also be special. These quarters started their lives as simple pocket change, no different from billions of others. But through manufacturing errors and statistical improbability, they became some of the most valuable coins in the world. And that transformation didn't require centuries of aging or discovery in some exotic location. It simply required someone to look, to notice, to recognize what they were seeing. So here's my challenge to you right now. Today, go find whatever quarters you have accessible. Check them, really look at them, examine the dates, the mint marks, the designs, feel their weight, listen to their ring, compare them to each other, and who knows, you might just discover that you've been carrying a fortune without knowing it. You might just be the next person to make headlines with an incredible discovery. You might just find that your life is about to change because you paid attention when others didn't. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the world of rare and valuable state quarters. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss future videos about rare coins and hidden treasures. Leave a comment telling me if you're going to start checking your quarters now. And if you find something valuable, come back and let us know because we love hearing success stories. Remember, fortune favors the observant. Wealth hides in plain sight. And sometimes the most valuable thing in the world is simply knowing what to look for. Now go check those coins, and may luck be with you in your search. Happy hunting!